William Mott, Bill Mott is here, who trains Royal Delta, that is running in the Dubai World Cup. And I suppose first up, though, obviously American trainers have been in the news this week. What's their word about Bob and what he? Have you spoken to Bob? And
no, I haven't. You know, I guess it's unfortunate, but fortunate he was somewhere where he could get everything taken care of. That's for sure.
Well, first up, though, let's now reflect on your horse coming over here. Assess your horse's chances in what does look a very competitive contest.
Well, I mean, the only thing I can hope for is that our filly is doing well, and she's traveled well, she's trained well all winter, she's had a prep race. She finished a second, although a distant second, but I wasn't dissatisfied with the effort. I think she'll, you know, be one that would move forward off of that. And she's done well since she's been here. She's been happy and healthy and moving well and seems to get over the track very well. Very pleased with, you know, she's a filly that's not terribly experienced, although she had, you know, a full year last year, but she's won, you know, at 10 furlongs. She's won the distance of the race that they're going to run on Saturday, and she has won on the all-weather when she won a race at Keeneland. She won a first-level allowance race at Keeneland last spring, and I think it was in her third start. That's the only time she's run on that particular type of surface. Other than that, it's all been on the dirt. But she did seem to handle that as well or better than she handles the dirt, and I'm hoping for the same thing here on Saturday night.
And what you've seen, she's giving every indication that this surface here, she is handling.
She seemed to go over it very nicely. And we didn't put a real serious, most of our serious work was done at home before we came. We let her stretch her legs out a little bit today. We just let her kind of open up a little bit down the stretch, and she was just floating over the ground. She seemed like she got over it very well.
And how do you assess the sort of the opposition in this race? I mean, obviously the European challenge, and then the other challenge, the Japanese challenge. What's your feeling?
Well, there's some unknowns to me. I've got to do more homework on that and study it. But I guess coming over here, we know that they're going to bring the best of the best, and we're going to have some very good horses in the race. I guess the only thing we can hope for is that our own is doing very well, and I'd say the Aidan O'Brien horse is he's quite an accomplished horse. He's won numerous grade ones. He's won in different countries. He's one of those horses that's just a top competitor everywhere he goes. They did try him in the Breeders' Cup Classic last year on the dirt, and he certainly didn't even disgrace himself there, although it was probably a surface that wasn't to his best liking. So, I mean, he's the horse that I know most about, that I've seen in person. So, I think he's a top challenger.
Okay. Questions?
Obviously, your history goes back to Cigar and victory in '96. Maybe you could talk about that. And I've only been out here 2 years, so maybe you've been back a lot since then. Or,
This would be my third trip back since then, and of course there's been a lot of changes since then. I was here 2 years ago when the paint was still drying on this facility. They, a different track, a different configuration of the racetrack, different surface, obviously a different grandstand. The rest of it is pretty much the same. I think all our quarantine facilities and the that sort of thing has been pretty much the same, but coming over here, they make it as easy as possible. I mean, the horses travel first class, and they take all the best care of the people as well. And so, it's been an easy trip, an easy transition. I think for the most part, as easy as it can be. Obviously, any trip of this magnitude is tough, and some sort of stress, winds up with the horse, but they make it as easy as possible, and our fillies certainly handle it pretty well. The first time we came over here with Cigar, there were so many unknowns. It was obviously the first World Cup. We had no idea, coming to this part of the world. I mean, it was all new for me and everybody in my entire staff, I suppose, and we didn't know what we were going to run into, and it was a little different type of trip then, not knowing what we were getting into. But the experience of being here surely helps and makes you feel a lot comfortable about doing it.
Since Cigar won, how many of the other American connections have sort of taken advice from you whether to bring their horses here, and what have you told them?
Well, I believe in the years following, I think it was kind of standard procedure for some of the best horses to make this trip. Now they did change the surface 2 years ago, and I think that's probably stopped some of those same horses, those same dirt horses, from coming. Maybe a different type of horse would come and take the challenge of the race, but some of the dirt horses are probably taking a pass.
And this particular horse, when did you decide to bring her here?
Well,
and there's a little bit of history against it because no filly has won it. So
yeah. Well, the first time we came, no horse had ever won it, so it was not unusual for us to take on a big challenge. But really, this filly, when she won the Breeders' Cup, she won the Breeders' Cup for the Filly Classic, and obviously, I knew she was going into the sale. 3 days later, her previous connections, the Prince had passed away in February, and I knew she was going to be sold. But at that time, I was thinking about, where would you, if I ever was to get this filly back, if I am lucky enough, if I'm fortunate enough to be the trainer after she goes through the sales ring, what would I do with her? And immediately, this race came to mind just because of the things I talked about earlier as far as the distance and the surface that she's been on, and I thought that part was a good fit. Obviously, we're running against some very talented horses, and we've got to find out if we can, meet the challenge as far as the rest of the competition goes. But I think, as far as bringing the best out in her, I think that the conditions could be very well suited to her.
From Cigar being here, the moment, the week, or the race itself, is there a moment that always comes to mind?
Well, it was a little bit more of a challenge with Cigar just because he was on his preparation before we made the trip. Got interrupted. We had the foot abscess, and he had developed a quarter crack, or he'd had an old quarter crack that had reopened up, and we actually missed some time training with him, and he was on an extremely accelerated schedule, a rush schedule, to put enough training in him to make sure he was fit enough to come over here, and so with him, everything was more. We were pushing a little bit to make it, although he was a proven horse and he had been through some difficult situations before, but he was tough enough to handle it. As far as the coming over here, we probably, I think we're just more comfortable doing it because we've been here, and I don't think we were on as quite a tough a schedule. I think the training regimen has been much more smooth and with this filly, and we haven't had to hold our breath. I guess with Cigar we had to kind of hold our breath and hope that the foot was going to be okay, and that he would be able to handle the tough training schedule that we had him on. But with her, that part's been a little bit easier. It looks like maybe she dropped a few pounds, but not too much. But I think you expect that going in. That's why I think the fact that we had a race 5 weeks ago and her training schedule we've been able to space it out. We've been able to space her works out a little bit and bring her into it a little more gradually than in the case with what we did with Cigar. I think you expect him to probably drop a little bit of weight on the trip. So, although we haven't put her on a scale, just visually, maybe she's tucked up just a little bit, but she looks fit. She looks good. She eats everything. She eats like a bull. So, you know, you can't put anything in front of her that she won't eat.
She had quite a solid workout this morning. Did she take a lot of work?
No, and actually the work this morning was easy for her. I mean, we just gave her a good open gallop and let her stretch her legs. She loves to train. She's never been hesitant to do anything you've asked her to do as far as the training goes. Once you're up there, she likes to get out and get over the ground, and you know, I guess we just try to do what's worked for us before. I mean, sometimes you're just guessing what the right amount of training is. I mean, we do as much with her as we can and still keep her eating and sound and healthy, and if we can just get her to the race in good order, that's the main thing.
In terms of getting back to Cigar, I mean, what did that victory mean for you, and also I sense that it really it was the first Dubai World Cup, but it also put it into the minds of Americans, I imagine.
To take the challenge of it.
No, to win it for you, what did it mean? I mean, I think it was ended up being a 16 race streak, but it was like the 14th or the 16th. So to win this race with all the unknowns, what did that mean? And what do you think it meant for American horse racing?
Well, it meant a lot to me, obviously, because we were, you know, he had been undefeated the year before. He was a champion. He was champion older horse, champion horse of the year. You know, he was, you know, won the Breeders' Cup, won my first Breeders' Cup Classic, and it was, you know, it was a huge win. I mean, personally, but really for America. I mean, anybody that was interested in horse racing was watching on TV, and people told me stories about, you know, how the different locations. Of course, now we have, you know, everybody's got a television in their living room, but at that time you had to go to either a betting facility, or you had to go to a racetrack or somewhere where they were simulcasting the races in order to see it. It wasn't televised nationally, so people probably gathered in those, you know, spots where they were able to see it, and it drew quite a crowd, is what I was told.
Cigar parties.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, cigars, funny enough, became very, you know, the cigar business really was on the uprise in America. I mean, you know, you started seeing more and more, you know, magazines with cigars being advertised, and of course we took him to Suffolk Downs, his first race back after we won the Dubai World Cup. We went home, freshened him up a little bit. 60 days later, we went and ran in the Mass Cap. It's a small track in Massachusetts, but they bumped the pot up, and they, you know, hyped the race up, and it's a small track that they had a big day, and of course they had all kind of cigar booths. They were, you know, rolling cigars out and selling them, and anyway, it was a lot of fun. It was something different.
Was it quite a gamble for you to bring your horse here? He was a renowned good horse, and you know, you were bringing him across the road to the desert. I mean, how did it tempt you to bring him for a start? And was it a little bit of a risk?
You know, I will have to say that I got every bit of a push from his owner, Mr. Paulson, Alan Paulson, was really a true sportsman, and he was the one that was, you know, I mean, I was willing to come, but he was really behind it, and he was never worried about getting beat. I mean, that's the one thing he never complained about. He loved to win, but when you got beat, you'd never hear anything about it. I mean, he'd take on any challenge, and he believed in Cigar. He believed he could do it. He believed he could win it, and he wanted to come. And of course, he was. So he was. very instrumental in the fact that we came. I mean, it wasn't, it sort of took the pressure off of me because I certainly didn't have to talk him into it.
What happens if they call you and say, we've got this race, can you come?
Well, I think they had announced it. I don't remember the timing of it, but I mean, we heard, we read in the news that next year they're going to have this race, the Dubai, the Dubai World Cup. And I had a couple friends that were over here. A veterinarian friend of mine, Mike Hauser, was over here at the time. He'd worked for me for years in the States, and he was over here as one of the veterinarians that started up their veterinary facility here. And so because of that, I was always paying some attention to what was going on over here, and we found it quite interesting when they announced that race. And of course, I think we were in the middle of a big season with Cigar, and how fitting it would be if we were still in action to come over and run in it.
I'd just like to ask, obviously, having made history, what's the lure in coming back? Was there a reticence initially? Is it $10 million?
Obviously the purse is always an attraction, but I think it's really it's only part of it. I mean, the attraction is coming to compete and win the race. I mean, that's what it's always been for me. I mean, the prize money, what you get is always the icing on the cake, I suppose. But when they do pay your transportation costs over here and that sort of thing, so they make it quite convenient to come. I mean, if you had, if you thought you were, a 15, 20 to 1 shot, and you had to pay all the expenses, you'd have to think about it, because it's a very expensive trip just to get here. But it's I think coming back, I think you always, it's just a big challenge. It's the biggest, the biggest prize in racing right now. So it's naturally, one that if you like competition, that's where you want to be.
Last one.
In terms of, I guess the last one, two-parter is, in terms of the field, I mean, I compare this to golf, and it seems like, some of the tournaments that we have here often have lineups that are even better than what you get on the PGA. And I mean, compared to the Breeders' Cup and Kentucky Derby, I mean, this is obviously much more international flavor. But in terms of quality of the field, is it comparable to those races?
Oh, I would certainly think so. I would have to think so. Although I'm not I don't have the opportunity to follow the Japanese racing that closely. It's kind of for me, it's kind of a distant thing. But I know their breed is certainly improved over the years, and we're getting some very good horses from Europe, which is a little easier for us to follow. But this really truly is an international race. This is probably it's a much more international race probably than what the Breeders' Cup is, I would say.
And a follow-up to that, I mean, as you said, this is your third trip, so you don't come every year. So what was it about this horse or this year that prompted you to come? And does it kind of, having your horse go up against an international field, what does it mean? Or what's the significance?
Well, I mean, number one, you've got to have a horse in the barn that you think is good enough to come. And I think she was a champion filly. She was champion 3-year-old filly and a Breeders' Cup winner, so she's sort of earned her way into it. I think it's not something that we've, just imagined that, she's good enough. I think she's put the race record behind her, and she's done what we've asked her to do at home. Now, I think the challenge is, how do you face up, just what you're saying, how do you face up, how do you match up with, the international field? So that's really what this is all about.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.